Welcome to The Truth in His Heart. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I'm excited to be in conversation with a multi-talented pianist with a diverse range of influences, including jazz, hip-hop, and gospel. He's known for his innovative Street Serenades series and his group, the Aaron Hill Trio, which pays tribute to the legendary Keith Jarrett Standards Trio. Please welcome Aaron Hill. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey. What's happening, fam?
I appreciate it. I actually lied. I gave you the full intro.
Perfect.
I've had a few people say, yo, can I just get that and use that for like my ringtone? I was like, look, whatever you need.
Yes, that would
be. So again, thank you for coming on. And for starters, I want to talk a bit about your sort of like your journey as a creative, as a Renaissance man, as a man that wears many hats, and currently you are wearing a hat. And how did you end up in this sort of current work that you're in?
Well, at age 5, my gifts were uncovered by my mother. When for Christmas, she bought me my first record player, 26 records, one for every letter, with songs that made me dance and learn my alphabets better. At 8, I was good at rhyming words, but didn't know it until one day my mom said, "You're a really good poet." It was Mother's Day. And nice. I was so surprised because all I did was give her a card with thoughts and words that I rhyme. So that's where my journey started. And that actually is the first like 8 bars of a children's book that I wrote recently that just tells my whole story. That's really where it started. I started off at age 5 with my mother. She gave me some records, and that opened up my mind to music in a new way. And it was a lot to follow from there.
Wow. I mean, that's the first time that someone started off their story with like some bars. So much appreciated. So
started for me.
Yeah. Because I look back on my stuff. I think some of those really early things, like you kind of start off with a point where you want to pursue something creatively. Like when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be the next great illustrator, next great comic book artist. And, I did rap for a little bit. We will never play those songs on here.
Please. That would be okay.
Go ahead.
My journey the reason why everything started off as bars, because everything would go from my mother giving me the record player to me becoming a rap artist, even before, piano and that kind of thing. So I can relate. And if I play a song, you got to play a song.
My aliases were out there. It was a lot of marble composition books at City College back in the late 90s. It was something. It was something. Yeah. Not a lot. It was something, though.
It's true, man. That's the thing about it. It was true. It was truly who you were, and this self-expression, Yeah. So I know you learned something great from it, and it was fun times, probably.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cornrows being worn. It's a lot of jabots on white tees. Look, we're, don't bring me back. You know how those kids are doing like 90s days or have your 2000s days. I might cosplay as myself from high school one day.
Oh, okay, dope. All right, I'm not even I'm gonna leave that alone.
I'll put the unit on and everything. It's gonna be great. So let's see. I read that your musical background, right, has influences from like iconic artists like Keith Jarrett, Robert Glasper, Chick Corea that shaped your sound, like as in style as a pianist. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So I got influenced and interested in playing the piano at about 17. After poetry and then hip hop, 14 to 16. At 17, I got interested in taking my music further because I was like, if I could do this well, as far as chopping samples and making beats by ear, what would happen if I learned? And I decided to pick the piano at 17. I taught myself how to read music, and then I started getting into learning how to play the piano from there. I was first influenced by classical musicians, as well as, I say classical musicians like Bach and Beethoven, jazz musicians like McCoy Tyner, Chick Corea, like you mentioned, hip hop producers and that kind of thing. But my top 5 were, being influenced by Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock, and just those guys that were around in like the 70s, crossing over jazz, blazing new pathways and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's where it all started. And I really got infatuated with jazz and jazz piano because of the level of expression. It was like it was boundless.
I started really like I didn't have that appreciation for it when I was younger. I just wasn't quite ready for it. And I find that I'm not a smooth jazz guy. I'll be honest about that. I like a little stank on it. I like it got to be a little something there, and it's got to have that bop, as it were. And
yeah.
I start looking at the vinyl, the burgeoning vinyl collection I have. It's more jazz records, and there's a lot of Charles Mingus stuff in there. And I'm getting to a stage as I get older that I don't like lyrics anymore. I don't like words anymore. I just like the instrumentation. I like the musicality of things.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. I find like, like I watch a lot of movies and I do a movie review podcast. So when you notice something that like is bad writing or like substandard writing, you're like, yeah, let's move that out. Let's just get to what you do really well. It's like playing that thing. That's what I'm realizing,
I feel you. And then I feel like the other side of that coin, that's the bonus, is like, sometimes when you take away words, then you get to have your own story. You get to put your own story into the music and kind of let it speak to you, the words that'll speak to you. And, for someone else, it speaks to them in that way, the way that's best for them. So, yeah, I look at it like a canvas. Like instrumental music to me is like that canvas where you have everything there, and then you can just paint whatever kind of picture you want on top of that. You can feel what you need. And then sometimes it's just the best thing, for it to be open like that, because it doesn't allow your mind, your left brain to just get so caught up in like even what you were saying, like, getting tripped up by certain ideas or ways things are phrased or, language, use of language or intention and these kind of things, Instrumental music is just there's just a purity to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel you on that.
So, you're kind of poking at it a little bit there. We talked about it a little bit before we got started. How has your background, your studies in like philosophy and theology influenced your approach to music? And I have some other bullet points there, but I at least want to start off with that standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I would say the first place where it influences me is I was brought up in the Christian church, the Holiness Pentecostal church. So, where I learned my first experiences of music at a young age were in this environment filled with a lot of emotion, a lot of, things that happen as far as improvisation, and the way that everything worked together, so to speak. So that from the bottom of who I am, so to speak, that influence, that's what you hear when you hear me play. Yeah. You hear me like listening to the room to see what's the right tempo or pace or the right mood or the right song, and that kind of thing. So that was the first place that it really influenced. It influenced my improvisational nature, my playing by ear, later on, and just feeling music, like embodying music, as opposed to it just being like something that you're doing like a rote fashion, something kind of dry and lifeless.
So there's a feeling thing that goes along with it, kind of getting a sense of an appreciation for what is around you and just kind of taking from that. And I find that in some ways, in my minimal experience in this area, but I did therapy for like about a year. And right. The type of therapy I was in was when I was working within was mindful awareness. And it was just like being very aware of what you're feeling, what you're sensing, what are the thoughts that come with it. Right. And I read that you have a mindfulness background. So talk about that and maybe how that connects to this whole sort of background that you have that might even like that appears to be outside of music and outside of sort of creativity, but plays a role within it.
Yeah. So coming from that environment of the church, and that kind of thing where you're practicing mindfulness in different ways or trying to practice self-awareness, to then we fast forward to the pandemic. you know. it's ACDC, you know, or BC, you know, after COVID and before COVID. And so we get to the pandemic, and so I've always had a fascination with psychology. So I became interested in psychotherapy, and I decided to put myself in school for psychotherapy just to help my friends, family, and community.
Yeah.
I'm 3 years in now, and out of doing that, and this year grabbing a certification in mindfulness and meditation, came this formula called 5M. And so 5M is a total self-care formula where I teach people how to decrease their stress, anxiety, grief, depression, improve their sleep, and increase their peace through music, movement, meditation, mindfulness, and mantras, positive affirmations. And so out of that brainchild, you know, comes workshops, it comes daily content, it comes, you know, a self-care album that I'm about to release, you know, that is pretty much like a mixtape. That's a combination of like a hip hop mixtape and a course for how to manage your stress better, you know, all in one. So yeah, that's how it all came together. Music, in my children's book, one of the things I mentioned was music calms us, puts us to sleep, and entertains. It's even made me fascinated with the human brain. And now I'm studying and practicing all kinds of things, like how to use mindful music to make positive change. I went all the way back to what music first meant to me. It's made me happy in life. It's my therapy. You know, I like to share with my friends and my family and make them smile, move, and dance so freely. So it's like full circle for me. Yeah. It goes back to what music was for me at 14, you know, on when I was with my friends after school doing it, not only staying out of trouble, but doing something that was productive, and we're learning and growing and being creative and expressing ourselves, to now adding the professional touch to it and wanting to do it my way as opposed to a traditional type of approach.
I think, and thank you for sharing that. And congratulations, by the way, in 3 years in, you know, shout out to you. I think when you have your own lane in, you know, because that's what it sounds like. It sounds very similar. It's like, no one else is really doing this at this rate or this style or whatever. And when those comparisons come in, it's just like, this is what I do. You know, this is what I'm doing. And this is why I'm doing it. But I love that you were able to tap back into why you loved it, you know, why you love doing it. And I think that's something worth revisiting regularly. I usually ask this question of folks on, you know, kids, right? When you're young, you just create to create. You don't have these different things that get in the way, the sort of doubts, the sort of comparisons, all of those sort of things that crush and kill creativity. You're just creating to create, right? And I ask people on occasion, like, how do you tap back into sort of that feeling when you're younger? And like I was saying before, you know, cornrows out, looking like Meek Mill in the video, just rapping to the camera. You know, like, how do you tap back into it? And just hearing that, you know, you were able to revisit why you did it and then apply that to what you're doing contemporarily. That's just beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thanks a lot, man. You know, for me, I've been very, 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 very fortunate in my life. Not only to have, you know, some exposure and experience in a safe environment that allowed me to learn it, you know, in my teens, but then also at 21, I got my first job at 21, you know, to go full-time music, making $100 more a week, and with 27 to 28 less hours. You know, so from there, my relationship with music from the very beginning to now has always been that consistent, like, place where it's fun for me, it's therapy for me. It doesn't feel like work. And I've been able to curate my journey where I can steer away from things that would make me have a not so good relationship with music. I've just been really, really fortunate. So, and I try to stay on that path and share that, you know, to help others.
Yeah. And, you know, not everybody is is down, to take that journey. I try to share it for people who are doing this, who are trying to do podcasting and storytelling and want to do something that isn't the easy thing of, getting on the microphone and talking about relationships and drinking booze and having the whole, the factory settings, right? Just here's your Shure mic. It's the same setup. No, nothing new, nothing different. And I'll say, like, sometimes I it's like, you may not have the stamina for it. That's why I just tell people, like, you might not have the stamina for it at this point, but I'm always like down to help and contribute to the community, as you were touching on with, some of the motivations behind what you're doing. And, it can be a challenge sometimes. It's like, damn, you don't want to do this. This is what you want to do. You don't want it easier. All right, I guess do what you do. You got it.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. What it makes me think about is I realize, and this is a coping mechanism. This is what I learned. One of the biggest things I learned from studying psychology. Sometimes we will choose familiar and uncomfortable over unfamiliar and comfortable, just because the thing we're most afraid of is the unknown.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So it's just, it is a tough thing though, because it's like, man, you don't want more out of this, but it's like, sometimes you're just in that place where you just can't, you just, only thing you can deal with is just what and what's kept you safe.
Yeah. I mean, even going back through and looking at the process, because I find like it would be, I think, irresponsible of me, at least from how I approach it, to ask questions of creatives and ask like certain things from them to share themselves, to bare their souls or what have you, right?
Right.
And not approach the questions from my point of view in the same way I'm asking them to approach them. So, I might look at things like, all right, what is my process? How am I going about this? And asking those sorts of questions and, really going about it. And one of the things that I do is try to incorporate those sort of challenging things in there, because I don't like that easy path. I'd rather have something that's always going to keep it interesting, because the minute in which I feel like I kind of mailed that one in, these are the same questions, there's nothing new, I go to an old file and it's like, Aaron Hill, you do this, ... All right, I'm going to use this old interview, ask these same questions. I'm just going to change the name for it. It's nothing interesting there. I rather, or even when I feel like I said earlier, the questions are a framework and I feel like it's too stilted. It's like, it's on me to improvise and judge on the fly based on the tonality of the conversation.
Yes.
That's the thing, and people don't see the little nuances there, but that's how I keep it interesting. And, in
church, they call it playing by the Spirit.
How often are you doing something musical related, whether it is, I need to listen to something for inspiration, I need to work on something? I'm always doing something podcast related, whether it's writing questions or what have you, or editing or whatever. But how often are you doing something to kind of keep the sharp, if you will?
Well, I'm living it. So like the real thing is me now trying to figure out, when am I not doing it? Because I'm living it. And it's so interesting because I'm living it in like a multiplicity of ways. Like if you were to listen to my notes, like my latest notes are stuff like this, where it's literally me. Know that focus is. Time is not your problem. Know that time is not your problem. Focus is. Time is not your problem. Want you to know that time is not your problem. Right?
Yeah.
So like that's music for me right now and in the moment, and the way I'm living and how I'm creating, so whether it be that or whether it be me, like last night, I play at a jam session around here in Baltimore. They call it Baltimore's best jam session. And I get the opportunity to play in every Monday. Like I'm living and breathing music, and this new passion of mindfulness and meditation, and, just trying to be a light in the world. I'm living and breathing it.
Yeah.
I'm always doing something. And the funny thing is, what I've now invited myself into is the place of knowing that to be the truth, and then just looking at my actions to find it, or looking at, like, I might be, washing clothes and you just notice the dryer, like,
Yeah.
you just like, you're locking in with these songs. So I'm just living, music and that kind of thing at this point. And now I'm trying to find and have space outside of that to be able to have balance.
Yeah. I think it's very similar because I was saying I do a movie review podcast outside of this, and sometimes I have to look at it's like, am I looking at this movie to enjoy it, or am I looking at it critically to review it? I'm like, I have to delineate what I'm doing, and sometimes like the different podcasts, if you will, require different things. Like this is, you're on. You don't want to just kind of mail it in, and you want to have like a good conversation where, and something that's like, fulfilling, that feel like it's, beneficial for both our times, right? And on the other side of it, it's like that may not always be like, you may have a guest, and you're like, all right, we got it. I think we good. And sometimes you might just connect with someone. It's like, yo, we could talk for another 30 minutes.
Right.
And that's how it goes. And
yeah.
But I was looking at I went to see a movie yesterday. We're recording this in almost January. It's December, but I was looking at a movie yesterday. I went to see the Whitney Houston movie.
Oh, nice.
And me and my partner, we're doing the thing where we watch a movie. We usually watch movies together.
Yeah.
And we have this rule. If we see more than 3 production companies, it's like, I don't know, guys. I don't know about this one. It was like 6. And I was like, yo. I was like, a lot of people wet their beaks on this one, guys. So it's like it's living it. It's like I'm playing that sort of game, but it makes it fun. And I think
at the same time,
finding that sort of balance of how much of me am I putting into it, I think that's where I'm really in that spot now, and I feel really good about that.
Man, let me tell you, I one of the things that like one of the other quote unquote titles, if you will, that I have for myself, or labels or ideas, is being a creative content strategist. And without going into anything ridiculous, it's really just helping people to understand how to capture and live their legacy in the same way that my folks were doing it in the 80s with the photo albums, with the lamination, right?
Yeah.
And just saying, now we have also HD versions of that, and you can capture it this way, and all you got to do is capture 3 seconds of this, and just, and just keep it going, because all of our ancestors wanted their recipes and their wisdom to go forward. And so now we can take oral traditions to a new level. Mm-hmm. And we can take documenting our lives to a new level. I believe in cloning now. And it's because what I mean is when you when you enjoy yourself, document your life, have fun, and do these things, you're actually making hundreds of versions of yourselves that gets to continue on for what you stand for in the most beautiful and the most real way, like just the most real and honest, and transparent way. So, yeah, man, every single day I'm talking to people and trying to explain one deep thing to them. We grew up in industries, labor-based societies where they can only use you for one thing. Mm-hmm. So they had to use you for one thing like you were a one-trick pony, but none of us ever were. So now we live in a place where you don't have to actually have that mindset. You don't have to split up who you are. You don't have to divide it into 10 YouTube channels or anything. Like, you are your brand and everything that you're into. Yeah. And so I just enjoy like trying to help show people that by example, but also just encourage them in that way, because that is the reality that we're living in. And you're not going to be happy unless you live that way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's don't Horcrux yourself. And
right. Oh man,
making a Harry Potter reference. Yeah, Harry Potter reference. Yeah. I've never seen any of the movies. I just throw that out there every now and again. This is how I consume movies, to know enough about it to sound like I'm smart.
And I know just enough about Harry Potter to just understand that reference.
So boom, we're on the same page. We're here. So How talk about talk about incorporating multiple genres into like what's your like sort of musical footprint, your ear, how you
Right.
approach music. Talk about that, how you blend those influences.
The one thing is, this is definitely one of those, like, this is just me being myself, right?
Yeah.
Where it started for me is, I'm gonna take you back to my childhood for 30 seconds or more. I'm just kidding. But where it started is at 15, when I'm making beats, my family had a digital cable when it first came out, where you had the different music channels. So I had a 4-track, and I used to hook it up to the digital cable box and take a Maxwell 60-minute tape and pop it in before I went to school. I would set it on one music channel, hit record, and then I would go to school. So one day it might be rock, another day it might be gospel, another day it might be jazz, another day it might be soundscapes, another day it might be classical. When I would come home from school, I would take that tape, and instead of, chopping records or sampling from records, those were my records. It'd be my tapes.
Yeah.
So every day I'd be making music with a different genre of music. So I hear different genres of music like a chef sees spices,
Yeah.
And they all just have their own flavors, but they're all one thing, so the way that I incorporate them is literally just by letting what I hear just come out and just be. If I beatbox something, and I'm singing a bass line that sounds like reggae, and then the lyric sounds like Whitney Houston, top of the range, like that's just what it is, I proudly call myself a musical mutt. So yeah, that's how it all comes together for me as far as incorporating different genres.
I love it. I love it. And I think a lot of times we are who our experiences are, what our references are. And you listen to a lot of stuff, you do a lot of stuff, even if it's like you're a filmmaker for sake of argument, right? Yeah. And it's like I watch a lot of this different stuff. Inevitably, it's going to pop up in what you're doing, what you're going to make. Had a conversation today with one of my painting friends, and one of the things he was suggesting is he was like, one of the best ways to learn how to paint is to basically try to make someone else's style and then tweak it and make it your own. That's it. And and a lot of people try to, it just comes from, it's just me just learning and being great. No, you're influenced by someone. And, that's just kind of how it goes. And it's very prevalent in podcasting. This is why you see so many people kind of doing the same thing. There's nothing really unique. And I think people try to fall into this sort of formula.
Yeah.
Like I like this. I like this quote. Is this quote from Currency, I believe, a while ago, years ago. And he was just like, when I'm in album mode, when I'm writing, I don't listen to anything current. He's like, I'm going back to the 70s. I'm trying to set a mood, man.
Yeah.
Listen to this current stuff. It's just like,
yeah. It's funny. Two things I want to tell you. One thing is that my group, when my rap group was together, right, we would listen to music together, and we would have the things that we enjoyed. Then we had the things that we didn't like. So when we determined like we didn't like it, we had our discussions. That was it. We move on. Later on, my friends would hear me still listening to that song, and they'd be like, "Why?" And they were literally like, "Why are you listening to that? Like, this is terrible." And this was me at 16. I said, "It's interesting because I learned the same things from listening to good music and not so good music. If I'm listening to something that I think is good and enjoyable, then it gives me a model of what I want to sound like, what I might want to do. If I'm listening to something that's not so good, it gives me a model of what I don't want to sound like and what I don't want to do." Or the other side of the coin, which I really love this, when I listen to something that I don't like, and then all of a sudden from just being in it and just sitting in it and being like, if this person likes it or these people like it, I literally want to know why they like it. And then all of a sudden I hear something, I'm like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then I'm like, oh, and then all of a sudden my appreciation opens up, in a unique way. So yeah, it's really interesting, man. Yeah, it's really interesting.
I think it's something to take from these things. It's just like you don't write it off. And even when there are some of these sort of non-ideal experiences, you learn something from it. I've learned how to navigate and work with a lot of different people. And, as I start looking at it more and more, it's like I'm essentially a professional in this field, and I operate as such versus some people just show up, not ready, not prepared, mics are dead, the whole thing. And being for the most part a one-man show, I get a lot done with being kind of like a singular individual.
Right.
Even though that sounds super redundant. But yeah, it's a thing. And I think it's, worthy of, like, you may not have a interview that goes as well as you would like. You may not have an interaction that goes as well as you like, but it's something that I learned something from, whether it's, I may not like to go back and forth with people, about scheduling an interview beforehand. I'll send over the email. If they get back to me, great. If they don't, also great. But I try to automate some of these things where I can. So it's almost like quality control. And I learned that through trial and error early on. You get too invested in it. Now, sometimes you can't do that all the time, obviously, but for the most part, about 90% of the interactions are almost off of a script. Unless the person has an extra question or something, I got to add something more to it. But it ensures that, all right, everyone is getting sort of the similar treatment. So, it accounts for, all right, maybe I misspelled that. Let me make sure I got that updated in a template or what have you.
It's interesting. I wanted to say, share one more thing with you about this topic. I'm loving this conversation, by the way. I wanted something interesting when we're talking about, like, people doing something, and basically, like you were mentioning with podcasts or even like with music, where you hear a lot of music where people, it sounds the same. It's just like this redundant thing, right? Nothing new. So here's something I think you might find funny. So in my very first rap, I had a gun. And I've never owned a gun in my life. And why did I have a gun, right?
Because the rapper
right. But here's the thing. This is the funny part about it, right? So, and my friends, man, we have the greatest laughs off of that, especially the older we get. They're like, yo, remember that time you had that gun? I'm like, all right.
Remember the time you pulled up the blicky in the studio? It's like, yeah. We don't talk about that.
Right. They're like, man, in your rap, you had a gun. And I'm like, yeah, no, man. And it's always a fun story because the beauty of it is this. I was certainly lying. But in an interesting way, I also was living like my highest truth at that point, because my highest truth and understanding was, I appreciate this art form. Mm-hmm. And outside of the gun piece, I like the rhythm and the metaphor that the rapper actually used, because I could get with that. That's actually some high, literary fun, cool devices, right?
Yeah.
And then but me looking at that and learning something from it, but also realizing that the only way to get to who you actually truly are is to actually living your highest truth with the best you can understand about what it means to do whatever it is you're doing, so that you can have that experience. You're going to have some experiences that are satisfying where you're like, yeah, I want to do that again. I actually like that. And that's regardless of whether it's the social norm or not, or whether it's accepted or not, like whatever, you come into that. And then there are going to be other things where you're like, how you're saying right now, where you're just like, yeah, that's dry. I don't want to do that anymore. But it helps you to learn what you want to do. I'm one of those people that doesn't believe you could actually ever make a wrong turn in life. All you can do is find new ways to get to the thing you were trying to get to, or find something else where you realize you didn't even know that you were interested or like that pathway, that scenic route, And then by process of elimination, when you eliminate all the ways that, not to do something, or that you don't like to do something, what are you left with? You're left with what you enjoy and how you like to do it, So it's an interesting thing. Like, when the horn players all sound the same, and you're just like, okay, but you still realize that is actually the path that you have to walk. And then some people just eventually get to that point and they have that experience from that, and then it takes them another place. And other people just stay there, and that's who they are. That's who, it's interesting.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a friend about, in filmmaking or what have you, and he felt that it was his time as a filmmaker was he didn't love it anymore, and he wanted to go into photography, and as an older person comparative to him, it's just like, just look at it. Just look at like, maybe it's something you revisit. Don't cut pieces of yourself off. And, that could be that point for him where it's like, I'm going to go up here, or I'm just going to like go here, or just go in a completely different, like I'm crossing lanes. I'm going to a completely different place. I'm in a spaceship now versus an automobile. And I think it's just also recognizing like the why. Always the why, like, that's what I always look at. The how, we can figure that out, but the why is very important for me.
Yeah, the why tells you the direction you're going in, and it keeps you the most aware, and then there's acceptance after that of all things that happen on that journey,
Yeah, it's like, that's what it is. I ordered this, didn't I? Like,
I in psychology, they have this term called structured amnesia, right?
Yeah.
And I put on Facebook not too long ago that my piano style when it comes to improvisation is structural amnesia. It would be defined in psychology as structural amnesia. So of course, that sparked the conversation. This is also the way I live my life. It mirrors in the music. What it is like, I'm just accepting of all the choices that I make and all the outcomes.
Yeah.
So, and structural amnesia is where you have just enough of a forgetting of what just happened, no matter whether you had a good experience or not, to make a decision that's not totally based on just what you experienced. Because sometimes that's helpful, and then sometimes
they try to use that in sports, and they use the whole power lines of he has a short memory. Just like, oh yeah, it never gets too up, never gets too down. And yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we got blown out last week. Can't think about that. This is a different game.
So it's that balance. It's like, to some degree, you better think about that and be studying the tapes. But then on the other side, you don't want to get too overwhelmed where you can't be free from it. Like it's that center, man. It's that center. So I'm enjoying whether it's music, whether it's in my personal life and relationships, whether it's in like looking at mindfulness and studying the mind and looking at us and myself. No matter where it is in life, that's the place that I'm always striving for, is like just that balance, centered place there.
So I got two more questions for you, real questions, and I got those rapid fire questions. So let's see. I want you to take a sec and tell us about both the Aaron Hill Trio and Street Serenades, and tell us about those a bit, and then I'll hit you with the last question after that.
Okay, beautiful. So during the pandemic, I got into another one of my fun creative moods. I look at adversity as really opportunity, opportunity to be creative. And so for many of us musicians, we didn't have inside gigs anymore. So I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and I say, okay, a couple years ago, I had this concept called spur of the moment, where I would just take my piano outside, find beautiful places in nature, and I would record and just want to make nice videos in nature. And that was it. And so I thought about bringing that back in like 2019. 2020 hits, March of 2020 specifically hits. And then I'm like, okay, it's time for it, right? Mm-hmm. So I was thinking what it might be, because I wanted to rename it so that it could, when people heard it, it could make more sense to like attach it right to something that they could see in their mind. So I was like, well, Sidewalk Serenades. And then the Creative Alliance here in Baltimore, my good friends, they called me and they were like, hey, that's been our series. We've been using the name. They're like, we want you to use it, like continue on, but would you work with us, in fact, Yeah. Like, hell yeah. So
works out.
Right. But I was like, all right, thought about a different name. Friend of mine and I brainstormed. Street Serenades came about. And then May 29th of 2020, I'm driving through Ellicott City to pick up an iPhone case from someone on Facebook Marketplace. I've never been in this place called Taylor Village. It's where a lot of the flooding happens here, and that's what it's known for. And so it's this quaint little village, and I'm like, I have got to find a place to pull over, just pull out my piano and just play. It's just a beautiful place. I just want to play for these people.
Yeah.
And so I pulled up in front of this place, walked down the street, and set up in front of this sushi place, and just started playing. And Street Serenades was born. And they came outside. They loved it. All the people loved it and everything. And so from that time until now, I've done over 160 street serenades all around the DMV, on street corners, on driveways, in parks, at playgrounds, all that kind of good stuff. It's led to so many smiles, of course, and so many, new relationships and new people that are just on my journey. It's led to that entire community where I started doing that whole business development, and the shops on that street, they all started supporting and that kind of thing. So it led to some business, connections. It's led to a whole lot, man. But most of all, it helped people through the toughest time that we've ever experienced in our history. Yeah. Yeah. And I got the bonus of my mom calling me in March of 2020 and saying, and my mom's 3 years in as a retired school teacher, 30 years in a inner city school, and my mom calls me in March of 2020 and she's like, son, during this pandemic, I'm going to get some adult coloring books to, to pass the time. And so she did that, started sharing her pictures on Facebook. And 2 months later, people started asking for them. She started sending them to her. My mom turned into a pandemic artist. And today they sold over 500 original pieces all around the city. I call her a hustle woman, right? My mom's 72 and she's out there. She's out there. And at least 50 of my street serenades, my mom, we're right there together. Her with her art, me with, the music. And she says we have our own mini artscape, It's been amazing, man. It's been amazing. Needless to say, our relationship has, just gone to the next level, and we've gotten a chance to make legacy together. So that's what Street Serenades is. And Aaron Hill Trio was born during that time, because trio for me goes back to where I started as a rap trio. That conversation, a trio conversation for me is the most fun. And so I developed a trio that had, upright bass player, Ed Rybick, and drummer Eric Kennedy. They came out with me, on a street corner, and we played every Sunday that entire summer. Yeah. And so, that led to some other things as well. But that's in essence what Aaron Hill Trio is and Street Serenades.
Thank you. So here's this last one, and this is almost a precursor to the rapid fire ones because it's only requiring 3 words. Describe Baltimore through a jazz lens in 3 words.
So I would say underrepresented world charm.
Okay. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. That was some work right there. I'll give you that. Because you took a beat. You were like, hold on.
Yeah, I wanted to take that in. And here's the funny part, if I could add this.
Yeah, please.
I was going to say underrated.
Yeah.
But I can't say underrated because you can only be underrated when you're where more people just know about you, period. And then they have, a feeling about you, the rating. So what did I say?
Underrepresented, right?
Underrepresented. Yeah. And maybe that's not even, but yeah, I would say world charm. Yeah. Underrepresented world. Is that a word? Underrepresented?
I feel like it is. It is. It's absolutely a word.
Yeah. I guess it would be another way of saying world's best kept secret, if you will.
A hidden gem.
Hidden gem. Yeah. World's hidden gem.
Okay. So you know what time it is. It's time for these rapid fire questions. I got 3 of them for you. All right. So
wait a minute. What do we mean by rapid fire? So I can make sure I'm cooperating, because you see how I talk.
No. So rapid fire, brevity is key here. Don't overthink them. I'm going to eventually just record that and have a button that just presses it because I feel like I say it to every guest. But so here's the first one. 3 favorite venues to perform at in Baltimore.
Keystone Corner, Our House, Terra Cafe.
Okay, 1 down. This is actually a funny one, I think. What would the name of your memoir be?
What's a memoir again?
like a autobiography. Like, this is my story.
Got it. This is my story.
King of the Hill. No. What'd you say it was going to be?
So I said kind.
Okay. I always go for the bit. I always go for like, here's the opportunity to take a bit for the person's name.
But see, that would be me thinking about it more. So
it's like, you know what?
It's so interesting how everybody processes like differently. Yeah.
King of the Hill, Tales from a Renaissance Man. Boom, done, right. Done. Marketing guy. Let's go.
Right. Yes. Hired.
Okay, so here's the last one, and this is definitely putting back on that sort of mindfulness hat, and it goes with your 5 M's. For the listeners, could you give them 2 mantras that, could be, just generally speaking, just super helpful in, combating and just kind of working through today, working through life as we know it currently?
Yes. This is a picture that I have. It's on Instagram. I haven't even pressed next to put the caption to post it, but this is literally the next thing that I'm putting up. It's a picture of me taking this. I'm looking actually in the mirror. The beach is behind me, and I'm taking a picture of a mirror across the room from me. The quote is, "Being honest with yourself that you are lost is the first key to finding yourself."
Yeah. Acceptance, right?
Yes. The second mantra would be, okay, this is rapid fire. So let me go. I got to stop. You see where I was going. All right. So I'll go with the one first came to mind. Feel good about, do what you can, and don't feel guilty about what you can't do.
I like that. And definitely, it's definitely a timely thing, especially when we're just all so busy. We're all working on the things that we're working on, and you're asked to do different things, different obligations, and what have you. And it's only so much time, resources, energy, bandwidth during the course of a day, week, whatever. So no need to feel bad about some of those things.
And let me make it, and you're right on point with that. No need to. It doesn't serve you. This will serve. Mantras are best experienced and taken in when they're made as personal I statements. So I would say that the mantra that you want to say to yourself is, I will do what I can and not feel guilty about what I can't do.
That's great.
I will do what I can and not feel guilty about what I can't do.
That's great. And I think that there's some value there for the folks listening. So Aaron Hill helping out. So in the last few moments here, tell the fine folks where they can check you out. And again, thank you for coming on. Tell the fine folks website, social media, tell them where they can check you out. And again, thank you.
Yes, thank you. The most important thing to me in life is 5mselfcare.com. 5mselfcare.com for us to all heal and grow and take care of each other together. You can't heal if you can't be real. So go to 5mselfcare.com. And then other than that, you can find me everywhere online, social media, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Google, at Aaron Hill's World.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Aaron Hill for coming on and sharing his story with me on The Truth in His Art. And I'm your host, Rob Lee, saying that there is art in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.